What's up, guys? Welcome back. So today I kind of want to touch on my experience with hypersensitivity, being hyper aware, very sensitive of everything going on inside of my body, and also touch on being sensitive to things that are happening outside of our body. But you know what time it is. Smash that like button down below if you're ready to kick anxiety in the butt. If you're watching on Instagram, do me a favor and hit that heart button if you deal with anxiety, especially if you deal with hypersensitivity. And I think being hypersensitive, especially if you have something like health anxiety, you're hypochondriac, it makes recovery tough, because even when we're starting to do the right things, even whenever we're putting a routine together, even whenever we're doing exposure, trying to change our life, whenever we are dedicating our life to recovery, we still have this overlapping time where we are still vulnerable to the hypersensitivity. And what is going to be our response when we feel something that could be normal or something that's from lingering anxiety? And what do we do in that situation? Do we go down the normal path of catastrophizing? Do we go back into the cycle of Googling? Do we go back into the cycle of giving that symptom negativity or fear, right? Or negative focus and attention? So in the beginning, when I first started to notice my anxiety, it was more acute, okay? I would be triggered. I oftentimes would go into an anxiety attack or a panic attack. My adrenaline would flow through my body. I would have every symptom that you could imagine. I then started to think that these were heart attacks, so I then developed heart anxiety, otherwise known as cardiophobia, which was like a sub little category of my overall health anxiety or hypochondria that I was dealing with. And I dealt with that first aggressive part for 2 to 2.5 years. But after a few months of dealing with more of the acute type anxiety, where I was consciously triggered into my symptoms, I started to develop more chronic symptoms. And a lot of you are either there or you're starting to get to that point to where you're having symptoms that are on autopilot, and you don't necessarily have to be triggered consciously to experience them. And this is another confusing part of anxiety, where we start to have anxiety symptoms when we're not anxious, right? We're just out and about having a good day, hanging with our girlfriend, our boyfriend, going to the mall, at a cookout, and then bam, your chest starts to hurt and you're like, why is this happening? I don't have anxiety right now. Why am I feeling this way? Now you're starting to get to the point to where the subconscious is doing its own thing. Your anxiety has been present for a long time. You obviously haven't resolved it, so the subconscious is starting to take control. And this is a very scary process when you first start to experience it. Now we are feeling our symptoms all throughout the day, no matter what, which means our focus, our attention, our fear, which is fuel for these anxiety symptoms, and our sensitivity, our negative focus essentially is magnified, right? So we're always looking for symptoms, we're always listening for symptoms, we're anticipating them, we're trying to determine what they are. We have a lot of thoughts that are going through our minds. Is this anxiety? Is it a heart problem? Why am I feeling this way at this moment? I'm having a good day. Why am I dealing with this right now? I'm not even anxious. Oh my God, why is my leg gonna do that thing that it did yesterday? Oh, there it is. What is going on with my throat? It feels like it's tightening. Oh my God, it's tightening even more. What's this sensation in my head? We start to become super symptom focused, and that's whenever I believe our sensitivity to the things that are going on in our body, whether it's caused by anxiety or if it's just a normal freaking thing, right? That's whenever our sensitivity starts to go up. And I think obviously as our sensitivity starts to go up, our pain threshold starts to go down, right? You have to think about it. I'm not trying to be insensitive with this comment, by the way, but it is funny. Whenever we're kids, we are told don't cry about that, right? Or don't whine about that symptom or that scratch or that cut or that boo-boo, right? Because it only makes it worse. And I remember that being true whenever I was a kid. And as an adult going through anxiety, whenever I would feel something and I would just complain about it, or whenever I would be scared of it, it made that symptom more intense. So you got to think about this. You have chest pain, you're like, oh my God, what's that? And hopefully you've already been to a doctor to get told that you're healthy and that it's anxiety, not a heart problem, right? So let's say you're already there. Let's be safe. But you have the chest pain, it happens. You're like, oh man, what is that, right? You put the focus, the fear on it. Like, man, I hope this isn't a heart attack. And since anxiety and the symptoms of anxiety thrive off of that, and you're becoming more sensitive, the chest pain gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So now imagine the process with the chest pain just nonstop throughout the day, and not just with chest pain. It could be any anxiety symptom. It could be you focusing and wondering about why your stomach is hurting, your nausea, your globus hystericus, the lump in the throat feeling, your headaches, tinnitus, your vision issues, whatever you're dealing with, your numbness, your tingling, you're going through that process and you're practicing being super focused, and that allows you over time to become more sensitive to everything going on in your body, almost, in my opinion, to like a freaking superhero power level. Like, you are actually able to feel things that pretty much no human being would be able to feel if you put that same symptom or sensation into their body, or they would barely feel it at all, okay? And I think it's hard for us to believe this. It's hard for us to accept this. So a couple experiences that I wanted to touch on. I can go on and on about this all day, but I talked about being able to feel food go through my body after I would eat. Very surreal feeling. I could feel it going from the upper digestive system to the lower, the whole shebang. An interesting thing with my heartbeat, okay? Well, the first thing that I started to notice whenever I had my cardiophobia was I could hear my heartbeat every time I would lay my head down. Now, there's a decent chance that to some level I could hear this before, but now that I was always listening, right, and focused in, that heartbeat was so much more pronounced and heavy and loud in my ear whenever I would put my ear down. So I had to actually start sleeping on my back so I wouldn't hear this, because it would just freak me out, cause me to panic, right? Because I thought there was something wrong with my heart. Then it got to a point after, practice of not only with the symptoms or, practice with focusing on them, but actually feeling my pulse, learning how to count it and everything like that. Eventually it got to the point to where I didn't even have to feel around for my pulse. I could sit here, tell you what my pulse was just by sitting here. I could feel my heart beating in my chest enough. It didn't have to be palpitating. It didn't have to be hard thumps. It could just be a regular heartbeat, obviously beating quicker than an average person because of anxiety, going at like 95 or 100 beats per minute, and I could calculate it and do it in my head without feeling on my wrists, touching my neck. That's how sensitive I had become. Something else that I dealt with was this pressure in my ear. Probably the last year and a half to 2 years of my health anxiety, I was in this phase where I thought I had lymphoma, a type of cancer. And I thought that I had it in and around this ear. I had a couple lymph nodes that I messed with way too much. Don't mess with your lymph nodes, all right? If you're dealing with health anxiety, they will swell up if you do it. Then you're gonna freak out even more like I did. So I did that. I was like, oh my God, it's cancer growing right here, and it's spreading into my brain, and now I'm having this ear pressure in my right ear. And when I'm telling you pressure, it felt like a chronic ear infection almost. Not some crazy pain, but just the stuffiness, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Imagine your nose being clogged up, right? We'll just translate that to your ear. It felt like somebody had shoved Kleenex or cotton balls way down in my ear. So I would be freaked out. I was like, something's growing in there. There's something happening. So I would go to the ENT many, many times. She'd go down there, she'd check it out, and she'd tell me, look, I don't see anything in there. I'm not really sure why you're feeling what you're feeling. And this would just frustrate me and freak me out. I was being denied CAT scans for it. So essentially, I just thought they were misdiagnosing me. Finally, she gave me a pressure test. I was like, this is gonna give me the answer that I need, right? So I go in there, and I sit down, and she says, look, it's just like one tick off. And she said, you should not be feeling what you're feeling. And that's when it finally dawned on me, and I had my experiences previously with hypersensitivity. I knew what it was, but I didn't want to accept that was what was happening again, right? I thought I'd moved on from that, but that's what was happening. One tick off on her test, it felt like there was like something shoved down in my ear, right? Now, if you took that same tick off pressure-wise and put it into Joseph over here that's sitting next to me, and he doesn't have anxiety, he's not really probably feeling anything at all. That's how unbelievable it sounds, but it's the truth, right? Some of you have dealt with the lump in the throat. I used to deal with that, right? when your throat feels like it's swollen, like you're gonna choke or you can't breathe, it's tight, right? Or it feels like you got a damn baseball in there. I felt that sometimes for days, but definitely I would get it acutely, like out of nowhere. If I had a high stress event or if I was having a panic attack, my throat would tighten up. Feel like there's a freaking baseball, all right? You get worried, you're like, what's going on in there? Especially if you've had it for days or weeks at a time where it just stays clenched. You think that you have throat cancer. You think there's something in there. You think that there's something lodged. You think that you're going to choke because of this. You go to the doctor, probably an ENT or whatever, and they look down there and they can't find anything. But you're swearing up and down like there's got to be something in there. You have tension that can't really be picked up on this test, and you're so sensitive to it, it feels so much more than it actually is. So we can pretty much apply that to any symptom that you're dealing with, ranging from numbness or tingling to headaches to stomach pain. You are dealing with that symptom. My thing is I don't want you to think that you're imagining these things. And I went through a period of time where I would go to the doctor, they told me they can't see it. I was like, I'm losing my mind, I'm going crazy. I just must be imagining these things, right? You're not imagining them. They are there. And of course, you're gonna have some symptoms that are painful, regardless if you're sensitive to them or not. But I just want you to understand the role that sensitivity plays in your existing anxiety symptoms. You could have a very minor anxiety symptom, but you're so sensitive to it, kind of like the pressure in my ear or a slight tension in your throat. It can magnify it tenfold. Hell, maybe for some of you 20-fold. There's no accurate number. I don't think there's any possible way to calculate pain threshold or sensitivity, right? But it's my belief that when you've put so much energy, negative energy, and focus and fear into your symptoms for a long time, your sensitivity goes way up and your pain threshold starts to go down. And many other things are now happening because of your sensitivity. Now you're sensitive to anything that you consume, okay? That could be alcohol, that could be caffeine. A lot of you having to ditch alcohol, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? A lot of you are ditching the caffeine. A lot of you are realizing that your sensitivity and your anxiety gets worse after you have sugar or processed food, fast food, bad things, right? You're learning to cut certain things out of your diet now because you're realizing that they spike your anxiety. And a lot of that is also just due to your sensitivity. You're feeling the negative effects of a lot of these things, which turn out to not be really good for you anyways, more so than you were feeling them before you had anxiety, which then resulted in the product of hypersensitivity. So now we're having to watch the things that we eat, right? And it doesn't even just stop there. I was mentioning you're sensitive to other things. We're sensitive to the light that we bring in. We're sensitive to things that we read, things that we hear. How many of you are jumpy? How many of you are startled very easily, right? You're sensitive to sound. So we're also sensitive to the things that we hear, the things that we surround ourselves, to the things that we see, right? So that's why we have to start detoxing our environment, right? We got to get away from negative people because we are sensitive to negative stories and negative stuff. We are sensitive to stuff that we read online, right? Our feelings are more sensitive. Everything is more sensitive. But although this is a huge struggle and it can complicate recovery, understand that you're gonna have an overlay where you're doing everything right, where you got the routine, you're exposing, you're doing all the right things, and you're still sensitive to the things that you are feeling in your body. This is why I think so many people get so close, then they feel something because they're sensitive, and then they overreact again, and they either Google again or put a lot of negative energy or focus into that symptom, and then it spreads again, right? So understand that even when you're doing everything right, you are still gonna have a period of time where you are very, very sensitive. It takes time for this hypersensitivity to wear off. That's why you have to be consistent. That's why you can't skip days. But if you want help, if you want these symptoms to go away, if you want to recover from anxiety, tons of awesome things in the description and in the first pinned comment. If you're on Instagram, go to my bio. Tons of things there, including my course and some online therapy that can really get you started towards your recovery path, all right? But I love you all. Check out this video, and I will talk to you tomorrow. All right, bye.